Hey everyone, it's GM Murky. Just making a video on 6 items that might not be obvious to new World of Warcraft retail players. Um, the first item on my list is going to be the bonus roll system. The bonus roll system allows players to roll for additional loot on boss fights. The bonus roll vendor is not necessarily obvious to every player that reaches 120. The vendor is located in the lower tier of the bazaar in Dazar Alar. Um, and then for Alliance, it's in Boralis by the Snug Harbor Inn in Tradesman's Market. And you can buy 2 Seals of Fate per week with gold, war resources, or marks of honor. You want to use 2 different currencies to buy each seal of War-Torn Fate. The reason being is because the second seal will cost you more of that resource. So if you're spending 2,000 gold on your first one, it's going to be 5,000 gold for your next one. So what I do is I spend 2,000 gold on one, and then I think it's like 250 war resources for the other one. I'll go ahead and give you guys an example of the bonus roll system here in a second. When researching your bonus rolls, you should take a look at the the Shift plus J adventure guide, and kind of just look around for items that might help you out. So here is this boss. We can look at the loot and see if there's anything we want to bonus roll for. So that is pretty simple. You can loot world bosses. You can also go ahead and loot you can loot Mythic Plus bosses, and you can also loot raid bosses. The bonus rolls will appear right after the boss fight, so you want to make sure that there's any gear that you can get before doing the boss fight. And once this is done, we'll get a pop-up. At 6%.
Well
Here we go.
fought, champion. We will never
I now
yield
have my
to a
bonus roll option, which I am not going to use for this boss because I need nothing from it. You can pass right over here. That pop-up will appear every time that you do a boss. And
Seize those
it's just a
supplies!
pretty easy way
Don't
to
let the Naga
maximize
have
your
any
drops
advantage.
and try to get items that you actually need. Hello again. I'm on a new character, or fairly new, at least. I've reached 120 and gotten a few things. But the second item on my list is new characters in Nazjatar. This is very easily the best way to gear up your character quickly once you reach 120. The Nazjatar questline will bring you to this quest right over here,
I proudly serve as
Scouting
Regent
the
Lord.
Palace, which will give you a benethic item and 20 prismatic mana pearls. So I'm
Silver
gonna accept
Moon
that
will know
quest,
prosperity again.
and talk
Yes.
to the Spirit
All
Walker. Give you a cinematic, which we're going to go ahead and skip.
Najara has the Tidestone of Golganeth. The recent invasions must have been a diversion.
Then you
As
select
long as she
your
holds the
benethic item
Tidestone,
that
she has
you
the
are
power
looking
to bring
for.
back the sea
Right
and
now, I
drown us
don't
all at any
need it
moment.
necessarily, but this is
Then it
just
is
an example.
imperative that we take control of it ourselves. We must find a way to break that barrier.
Once we complete that quest, we get our mana pearls, so 20 mana pearls and a benethic legging.
We have made
The
many
very
sacrifices.
next quest is the important part. So this quest requires you to use those mana pearls to upgrade the benethic armor that he just gave you. What you want to do is, instead of doing this quest, you want to run over to the benethic vendor.
I hope I have what you need.
Right here. And you want to purchase we're going to purchase 4 of these items that we didn't get in that quest. So we got leggings in that quest. We're going to get a helmet. Going to get shoulders, chest piece, and a cloak. So now,
we can scrounge together.
Instead of getting 1 piece, I've gotten 5 pieces of 385 gear. So that is important when you're just starting out a character. You can very easily complete this quest later, just upgrade an item, just by following the Nazjatar quest line. Alright, so the third item on my list of things that are not necessarily obvious to new players is crafting related. Anyways, you basically need these items called Expolsum to craft just about anything that is higher than, I think it's 125 in most professions. The Expolsum is pretty difficult to farm. You can gain it from 2 options. Sometimes there are world quests that will offer you 5 Expolsum for completing them. And then you can also scrap items for Expolsum. So these are my old goggles. I'm gonna go ahead and scrap those. And I got some Expolsum from it. And that's only because it's a guaranteed drop. You can farm for items on your character normally, but that's kind of a lackluster way to go about farming for Expolsum. The 2 things you want to know about scrapping for Expolsum are that each piece, regardless of how they're rated, if it's epic or green or anything like that, if it's scrappable, it has a 16% chance to give you Expolsum. That's of course minus the goggles that I just showed you and trinkets. Trinkets will always give you an Expolsum. The best way to go ahead and farm for Expolsum is through creating an alt that will be using leatherworking and farming Krogs in Nazmir for leather to create an item called, that is the coarse leather arm guards. When you need to get some Expolsum on characters, just send all of the greens over to them to scrap. This is far faster than farming items separately. In addition, send your blues to an enchanter if you have it. I'm going to show you the farm in just a second for leather workers. So here I am on my poor exiled demon hunter, but she is my leather worker. I'm going to Nazmir right over here in this section because there are Krogs that have unlimited spawn rates and they always have to have two here. You'll see we have some people here farming already. And you'll see, just by observing, exactly why. So you see I can skin all of these right here. Sometimes I'll get lucky and I won't have any skinners in this area, but sometimes it's a race to go ahead and skin. But as you can see, I've been pretty successful, and this is what's left over from my last run on it. So you'll get meaty haunch, you get coarse leather, some simmer scale, some tempest hide, not too terribly much of that, and some bloodstained bone. And then also calcified bone from these guys. And you sit here and you just tag these guys. You get some loot and keep skinning. Once you're done with that and you feel like you've skinned enough, you go into your leatherworking menu here, and there's going to be an item, so coarse leather arm guards, and you just keep making these guys and sending them to the people or the alts that you need Expolsum on, and you just scrap those. And that is just about the most efficient way to farm Expolsum if you're trying to level your professions, if you're trying to get a certain piece of gear and just like a little bit short on the Expolsum, but you don't want to wait for a world quest to come up. It's just better this way, and plus you make some gold off of it and everything else. You'll get more resources, you'll get some of your leather back, you'll get some items through scrapping that you can use on other professions as well. So that is my third item, farming for Expolsum. Okay, for the fourth item on my list, when you start out a new character in BFA, there are not a huge amount of options like in previous expansions for obtaining raw gold or getting anything like that, but there is a way that you can do this without really stressing yourself out too much. Also, you get transmogs. Like I got this transmog from this dungeon and some other ones in the Warlords of Draenor expansion. Anyways, if you run these raids, then you can get a lot of raw gold. The one that I'm in right now is Blackrock Foundry, and that one can net you about 7,000 gold in just vendor items and different stuff. And most everything's pretty easy to kill on Resto.
Too far away.
Pretty much two-shotting everything. You just run through these, loot everything, and get all of the boss drops, and you will gain a lot of raw gold. If you're for some reason short on a lot of raw gold, or just not a lot of raw gold, but any raw gold that you need for repairs or anything like that, you can run through these and obtain items that are instant gold for you. And it's just super simple. It's not hard. Everything, especially if you're geared for BFA, everything dies pretty quickly. The High Mall, for example, gives you 4,000 gold in items roughly, and Hellfire Citadel will give you up to 12,000. That's just for Warlords of Draenor, and you can also make gold off of your table missions and world quests. keeping an eye out for your table missions and world quests, then you can go ahead and do those for some raw gold as well. The fifth item on my list is something that might not be obvious to everyone, but once you reach Exalted, a lot of people have the temptation to really never look back and farm for rep on those particular places. But if you look at this bag here, you'll see that you can obtain a supply chest for reaching another rep goal. If you get this supply chest, which I've gotten several already, you can get an item, which is meh. I mean, sometimes you can use it, but a lot of the time, I mean, especially at my gear level, a lot of the time I can't use it. But you do get 4,500 gold. So those can be pretty important, and you just I wouldn't shoot for these, but I wouldn't ignore them when you're going through your world quests. So if you see a reputation reward up, you can do that and just kind of stack it up there. So here's a reputation reward that I could get for the Talanji expedition over here, and potentially get closer to that 4,500 gold, which is what I aim for when I complete those. But it's something that isn't too terribly obvious. They just say that you get a supply chest. They don't really say what's in it. But I've always gotten 4,500 gold, so I find those very worthwhile. Okay, and the sixth and final thing on my list, for things that are not completely obvious to new players, is kind of a playstyle sort of deal. Anyways, I have replaced my Q and E bindings, as you'll see down here. My Q and my E are bound to two different items. The Q and the E are just a copy of the A and the D move, except you are moving in a particular direction. If you can manage to go ahead and learn how to use your mouse to navigate, you won't need those keys for that particular function. So I find that it's a lot more useful for me to have spells that I have on my like 7 through 9 over here. Obviously these are UI action bars, but over here I do like to have things key bound. So I'll have R, which is my my effervescence, and T is tranquility. So those ones I don't have to reach for. My Q is to use my card essence on this character. It will regenerate my mana. And then my E
I must get
is
closer.
to go ahead and rush to one of my allies. So those are useful to be right next to my movement keys, which is why I choose not to have those strafe keys bound to character strafing. It can be very useful to have those extra keys right there by the movement spells for quick actions, especially in Mythic Plus content, where you have to move around frequently, or in raid boss fights where you will also have to dodge mechanics. And this is GM Murky, and I hope you enjoyed my list of 6 things that are not necessarily obvious to new World of Warcraft retail players. If you like my video, go ahead and like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.